Hello there again. I'm going to try take two since I got kicked out of the live feed, and I'm going to give it a try again. And so if you want to say hi again, I didn't get to see it the first time, though I did see Esther from you're here from Israel. So welcome and thank you. If anybody else is there and wants to let me know that I've made it to live on take two, that would be great. So I'm just going to take a moment of defining the process. And one of the things that for the process of writing a book, and some of you that are listening no doubt have done that, and some of you probably have something in your heart that you want to get out into the world. And know that you'll get to that sooner or later. So I encourage you to do that. And for those of you that already have, well done. I now understand some of the accomplishment and the time that it takes to do that. And then there are some of you that said one day maybe. And I was still in the one day maybe probably 2 years ago. And I had already submitted a book proposal 5 years prior to that. And some of the feedback I received on that proposal has helped shape what the book that I have written now. But at that time, when I got the feedback, I wasn't yet ready to write the book. And there was a lot of reasons for that. And that was probably not having the confidence in my skills in order to do that. Not the ones that I was writing about, but the actual writing itself. And another reason was simply how does one have long focused periods of concentration when you're working full time, when you've got lots of responsibilities and children to raise and really other important things to do. That take a higher priority. So there was that. So I think eventually that it becomes clear when you spend some time doing some of these practices as to when the time is right. And some people are able to do this with multiple responsibilities and focusing in short periods of time and doing it in sound bites. And very often the work does get done. For me, I needed long periods of time of gazing out the window into what looked like nothing at all. And I was a bit concerned about that at one point until I was listening to a podcast I really love, the Tim Ferriss Show. And he was talking to an author that I respect and admire, and I'm very familiar with his work, and it was Malcolm Gladwell. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect that he spends more time thinking / daydreaming than actual writing, and it is part of the process. And somehow hearing Malcolm Gladwell say that to Tim Ferriss helped me as a newbie writer, just a wannabe author at that point, to go, this is part of my process is gazing out the window. I'm gazing out the window now as I look out to this lovely sunshiny day in Pittsburgh. And that helped move the project forward. But there was also something else really key that was going on at that point. And if you have your book yet, and I do have the book, I'm very excited to be able to show you that. And if you're in North America, your books will be shipped this week. You'll notice in the dedication that I've dedicated it to two I call best sister friends that had recently passed away. And I'm going to read you that in just a moment, but it was at a time where they were not yoga teachers or therapists, but these two sister friends were people that I hope you have this sort of friends as well, of people that cheer you along and always want the best for you, and are there odd hours of the day and night when you need a bit of encouragement. These were friends like that. And unfortunately, they died quite young. And I thought about them in that process and their lives being cut short, in that they would have wanted me to finish this. So I'm going to try and hold it together as I read the dedication. In loving memory of Christina Carlucci Wilson, 1961 to 2019, and Elizabeth Ann Marshall, 1968 to 2019. Two of the best sister friends a girl could have. I loved and admired you both deeply, and I believe the feeling was mutual. I miss you daily. Christina and Beth, this book is for you and your dearly beloveds. For Jim, Ben, Emily, and Sam, and Alan, Doug, and Darcy, respectively. When times were rough during this project, I thought of you and knew that you would want me to finish well. So I did, and I will never forget the friendships we have shared. So I needed the inspiration of knowing. I kept their names, their memories in my heart as I was writing this book. And, you know, it really helped me in the moments that were really difficult to be able to keep going. And like all big projects, being able to find a way to push yourself forward when it feels like it's a bit too overwhelming. We all need those moments. So finding out a why and then finding out some motivation to be able to keep you going and inspiration. And the memory of those two friendships, along with many other things, kept me going. So thanks for bearing with me as I share that. So there's a lot more I could say about the process, but I'm going to paraphrase from the initial acknowledgments that I wrote that was at least twice as long as to what made it to the book. So if you don't already have a cup of tea and you want to just get yourself comfortable, that's what I'm going to go into next. Because there's so much about a book that would seem like it's a really solitary process, and writing actually is a solitary process. But I am now a lot more cognizant of all of the people it takes to do that. So 9 months is the amount of time that it took me to write the book. But the reality is that I've been writing the book for nearly 20 years or so. And it was a little bit of a surprise. So I'd heard many authors say it before, of just how many people it takes to write a book. So as a mother of 3 adult children who are 25, 23, and 19, I liken the process to a lifelong commitment of parenting. It takes a great community of people. And now today, if you're watching this, you are also part of that great community of people. And I thank you for that. And it's a challenge to be able to thank everybody. And you'll get the Cliff Note versions in the actual printed book. And so if you'll indulge me a moment, I would like to expand on those thank yous just for the next few minutes. So first and foremost, I am grateful for the leadership and mentoring of Amy Weintraub, who so eloquently described my intentions for this book in the foreword. Amy, you're a great example of living what you teach. Some folks have felt almost every step of this process and have lived it with me. And I see you doing that each and every day. And I'm so grateful for your words and the books that you've written and the teachings that you've done that have greatly influenced my life. So some of you have been there for me with your time, with your expertise, your creativity, and sometimes a cup of tea when I emailed, called, or just turned up on your doorstep, even if you didn't know me yet. So there's a second group that I want to thank, and that begins with Nancy Rude and Jamie Sloan. These are gritty women in leadership who've created a path for my teaching in environments that have mountainous bureaucracies. Thank you for hanging in there and creating that path. Heather Mason for being an inspiring example of a leader in the field of yoga therapy and mental health and making time for me when I could get to London. Catherine Cook-Catone for letting me use her wonderful work on trauma-informed yoga teacher trainings that you'll find in the resources towards the end of the book, and for housing and feeding me on the way on my trips to Kapalu when I would come through Buffalo. Thank you to Deb Dana for her brilliance in translating polyvagal theory for therapists and for the kindness and compassion of your teaching, Deb. What a joy it was to take your training at Kapalu in Massachusetts, and for Melanie Burns for the stunning visuals of polyvagal theory. That was also at the course with Deb Dana at Kapalu. Particularly like the lighting up of the skeleton with the different circuitries involved. That was just really great. And to Steve Forges for returning my emails, for answering my questions, and for taking the time to edit my chapter on polyvagal theory. Thanks to you, Steve. I sleep better at night knowing that I have at least represented this work well enough for you to feel comfortable endorsing it. I'm greatly indebted. And to Jane Ellen Stevens, who is the founder and coordinator of the ACEs Too High website and ACEs Connection, ACEs standing for Adverse Childhood Experiences, for always promptly answering my questions and directing me to some really excellent resources, those two websites notwithstanding, ACEs Too High, ACEs Connection. Make sure you look them up. Additionally, I'd like to thank Marlisa Sullivan for taking time to carefully go over my summary image, which you'll also find in the resources, of polyvagal theory, and being willing to have a phone conversation about it. Thank you to Rose Cress for your encouragement and for always pointing me to excellent resources. For Iona Smith for making our stay at Kapalu so memorable and being a listening ear when I needed one. For Ellen and Linda Calm for making your beautiful home away from home available to me and to my family during the writing of this book and many other times. For Tanya Sullivan for giving me a winter respite at your home in sunny Orlando. And for Lisa Flynn for taking my phone calls and generously sharing your own experience of being an author. For John Stolwart for sharing your wisdom of the publishing world as a best-selling author. To Andrea Hyde for telling me many years ago that in addition to being a clinician at heart, I'm also a researcher, writer, and scholar. To Satbear Khalsa for promptly returning my emails and sharing PowerPoints with me and being so clear in the message of what yoga is about. For Louise Goldberg, to your willingness to give a listening ear when I would freak out about my inability to deconstruct polyvagal theory. And for Jen McCaslin for making time in your schedule when I needed someone to read 70 pages of text right now, and for geeking out with me over polyvagal theory. For Mary Shan Overton for hearing my tales of woe in the early years of writing and then telling me I was just fine. I trusted your judgment and it did work out, just as you said it would. For Renee Primus for taking my calls and meeting with me even as you juggled kids, your own writing pursuits, and being a full-time English lecturer at University of Pittsburgh. For Kelly McClellan, who gave me phone support and accountability through this project. The faculty, staff, and the students of Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, it's also my alma mater, who have helped form me as a writer and scholar and encouraged me to be practical. And to Kelsey Regan, who willingly sat with me as she worked on her own manuscript to keep me company when I had too much alone time. As the idea for this book was percolating, I found a small cohort of wonderful women who were also percolating their own projects. Katrina Woodworth gathered us, Renee, Jen, and Stephanie, and we schemed, shared, planned, cried, and prayed. And we all stepped into new projects with clearness and clarity. How amazing it is to think of the fruit that has come from that time. Thank you, Katrina. To my Tuesday morning women's gentle yoga, you know who you are. Writing didn't allow for much teaching, but on Tuesdays, I got to be your teacher and connect to what I love to do the most, seeing your bodies transform from practice. Teaching makes the writing come alive for me. And if I didn't teach, I'm not sure what I would write about. Also special to me are my yoga teachers over the years. My first yoga teacher, Beth Shaw, who was kind and supportive, despite my seeing myself as the weak link of the group. My many other teachers over the last 20 years included the late Bakir Algan, who taught me the value of using props, Leah Kalish, who taught me everything I know about teaching children, for Susie Haitley, who taught me the value of moving slowly and how to find my pain-free range of motion, Amy Weintraub and Rose Crest for helping me to find the intersection of yoga, mental health, and allowing me to see for myself the benefits of chanting and meditation. And for Sarah Court and Jill Miller for teaching me the value of self-massage with yoga tune-up balls. And Christine Kavori-Weber for affirming and teaching me that slow, breath-focused work is transformative for the mind and the body. And thank you to my therapist friends and colleagues who have been willing to allow me to test my practices with them and then give me real-time feedback. Beth Christiana, Ali Papacek, Rachel, Alan, Mari Stout, Jen McCaslin, and Paula Soto. I'm so deeply grateful to Carson Morse, my acquisitions editor at Pesci, for taking a chance on this first-time author. And for the whole team at Pesci, since I wrote this, I've been interfacing with even more editors in publishing and people in the Pesci publishing community, like Linda Jackson and Kate Sample, and a whole team of people whose names I don't even know that have helped to bring all of this project to life. And then there's Jen Cohen Harper. She's the founder and CEO of Little Flower Yoga. And she introduced me to Carson Morse at Pesci, also her editor. And the journey of actual publishing began from there. Jen, you are my hero. This would not have happened without that connection. I couldn't have asked for a better editor than Janessa Jackson. And it felt humbling to know that someone was giving such careful attention to the words that I had labored over. I felt seen, heard, and respected, and I struggled to bring some of my ideas and knowledge to life in a coherent fashion. You have made me look good. I believe in the power of prayer, and there's been a dedicated group of individuals from my faith community who have helped me, that have held me up through their prayers. I have felt them. This book would not have happened without their support. As I've been writing this book during 2019 and 2020, I have concurrently finished a 2-year certification to become a spiritual director with the Numa Institute. My Numa teachers and cohort have listened to me, discerned with me, taught me, engaged me, questioned me, and loved me on every step of the way. Tish Harrison Warren, when I was in the earliest days of writing my book proposal, getting a contract and getting started, you will never know what it means to me to write near you, a real life published author and a genuine, caring, loving human being. If I were going to be a successful writer, I figured osmosis might help. Thank you for humoring me with your presence, and congratulations on your latest new book, Prayer in the Night. To Mari Stout, my neighbor, friend, and the primary demographic of my book, an awesome therapist. Thank you for being kind and a patient listener to my heart and my ideas as we walked our neighborhood on many early Saturday mornings before our families and responsibilities called us back. And if there were medals to give, surely Leslie Wright would receive one. When I owned various yoga studios, Leslie taught yoga with me, and it was often her efforts that kept the studio running efficiently and orderly. So much so that I gave her a new title, DBO, Director of Beauty and Order. But Leslie's a woman of many talents. She was a high school English teacher in another life, and at some point in this project, she offered me the gift of her undivided attention to read my humble offerings. It was a long, slow, arduous process. In addition to grammar, you helped me flesh out my ideas more fully. And at times we laughed until we cried when you would bring my attention to a practice that I had written that was actually impossible to execute, which of course was not my intention. So at times we laughed until we cried. So I have Leslie to thank, and indeed, if you do not need to be a pretzel to do these practices. And she would wisely say to me after wiping away her tears, I don't think that's what you meant to say. And she never failed to cheer me on, and she offered her wise counsel and gallons of tea on a weekly basis. I may never understand parallel structure or dangling participles, so if I got it right, it's thanks to her and my editors. And if not, the errors are my own. But know that I tried hard. That's got to count for something, right? Leslie, I owe you big time, my friends. To my friends and family in Australia and in England, thank you for checking in and for your interest, whether or not you understood what I was up to. And I can't wait to give you the books in person as the years unfold. And Mum, thanks for always believing in me. It means a lot. I'm nearly done. My children, Maren, Jacob, and Luca, have been true champions of my work and encouraged me every step of the way. It means so much to be able to leave this legacy of work for you. Each of you have been an integral part of my journey, from inspiring me to want to get well after the car accident that changed everything, to working the front of the desk at our yoga studios, sweeping the floor, putting the props away, and to assisting me at trainings and selling t-shirts at conferences, and to eventually learning to be yoga teachers yourselves and joining me at workshops and conferences as my colleagues. And Mama couldn't be prouder of the awe-inspiring people you have become. But just in case you ever wondered what I've been up to in the wee hours for the past 20 years, this book will, beyond a shadow of doubt, fill in those gaps for you. And lastly, everyone needs a first reader. Mine is my best friend and husband, Doug. This doesn't work in some marriages, and at times it has been tricky for us to navigate the different roles. There have been some wild highs and lows, but after 30-some years of marriage, we seem to have found our way together. And I could not be more grateful for your love and support of my crazy aspirations. You can probably see why the editor asked me to make that into one page. And I realized after a few tries that I couldn't do that. So I was granted a page and a half, and I'm very grateful that I at least got that. So as you can see, and I probably still didn't get to thank all of the people, because since then we've got the people that are helping me with social media, like Emma Highlands and Abby Hughes, and all sorts of things going on behind the scenes that truly bring a book into the world. But don't worry, I won't add any more of that just at the moment. So I will be going into some of the questions that have come up on the Facebook group that we created for this launch team. But before I do that, and I'm going to bring another screen in so I can see what those questions are and I don't have to leave the live feed. Also, in this posting just below, we've tried to pin it so it stays current, is the desire to get honest, heartfelt reviews this week. So if you made it this far in the video and you've read enough of the book that you can give an honest, heartfelt review, we've given you a few tips and places that it would be great for you to put those reviews in the coming week. And our goal is to get to 50 reviews on Amazon, on Goodreads, and Barnes and Noble within the week. I'm not sure if we can do that or not, but I would love it if we could take a run at that. So as I said, there's some tips, and don't worry about having to write a lot, 1 to 5 sentences. And I get asked to do this often, or I don't think I realized until the last year when my book's been in editing of just how important it is for authors to hear your voice, whoever you are. If the book has resonated with you in some way, those honest, heartfelt reviews really do make a difference, every single one of them. So thank you in advance. And if your week just feels too busy, and you can put a bookmark in that, any time is a good time to leave a review, but the next week would be really helpful. So thank you. So lastly, I'm going to get to some really good questions that have come up in the Facebook group. And I don't know that I can answer them comprehensively because some of them are beyond the scope. I'm just going to shift my position for a moment. Laurie Haas had a beautiful comment about enjoying the book and the vibe within it. I am particularly fond of that word. Liking the vibe, gets a good Aussie accent and some insider jokes in my family going. But she really appreciated the explanation of polyvagal theory. So you don't have to know polyvagal theory to do this work. I just found it a helpful lens to look through as to why the body does what it does. So Saskia in Brighton, you're reading there, you got your copy in England because copies in England and Australia arrive before the US copies. Go figure. So thank you. She's taking notes and digesting, and you're liking that it's clearly written and you can hear my voice as a gentle and wise voice. Thank you, Saskia. I appreciate that feedback. So the question is, I'm wondering if there's anything specific to try for high anxiety and panic when breathing has become shallow and there's a loop of thoughts bringing anxiety, and anxiety releasing adrenaline. So in the moment that that's happening, wouldn't be the time, generally speaking, to introduce a practice, and finding another time. But if you notice that this is a pattern for you or for your clients, all of the practices maybe accept things like bellows breath, the inhale, exhale, if you take the practices that are in the balancing section and in the calming section, and really picking out any one of those. So take, for example, stair-step breathing. Most of those types of breathing are going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And as I've written it, I've explained that I have seen immediate influence of these breathing practices, within seconds or minutes when somebody practices them, and it resonates with their nervous system. But at the same time, there is a building up capacity of trying these practices and having them be part of daily practice for you, and having the muscle memory of the breathing and the lengths and the inhales and the exhales. All of that is, I think, key and really helpful for building up habitual practice. And the self-awareness piece that we get from practicing yoga helps us to get a little bit ahead of seeing the early signs of when we're feeling anxiety or panic coming on. And I've also talked a bit, only a little bit about this, of yoga helps us in more in upstream than downstream. So if we develop our awareness, which the regular practice can do, we can get upstream of noticing when conditions happen or thoughts or sensations in our body that allow us to see before the anxiety spins out of control or feels out of control, to be able to do something to come back into that calmer space. So it's that awareness, it's the calming practices, and being able to put those things together that are really going to be helpful as a treatment plan when you realize yourself that you have those things going on, or when you're thinking about how you might introduce those with a client. And let's see, Saskia also said, how does polyvagal theory help understand what's occurring when high anxiety and panic attack results? So your nervous system is going into fight and flight, and that's a adaptive survival mechanism that feeds. It's sort of it's a feeding off each other. And so if we understand that that's what's happening in the nervous system, and that is a pattern that happens, again, we can come back. It sort of ties in with the other question. If we can be aware of that sooner, if the anxiety is here and we now recognize it here instead of right before we get to it, then there's more likelihood that we can use the powerfulness of breath and movement to be able to bring ourselves back into the state of ventral vagal and tapping into the social engagement system, and bringing us, and Steve Porges says repeatedly that the breath is the best access, or the most direct access to the different circuitries. So I hope that helps. There's certainly a lot more to that to be able to unpack. Another question here about someone who experienced dissociation and confusion. And there's also some terms that I don't specifically use clinically, because they would be beyond the scope of my practice. And titration, pendulation, mudras, intentions, they're all really, I'm sure that that's all really good things to have in your toolbox. I think from what I'm offering in the book is, again, this idea of being aware and noticing if you've got something that's going on with you, and you're aware that you're just completely in your head, and that's a very good time to be able to do some of the more integrating practices, maybe choosing some things from the balancing practices, or maybe it's just putting everything down and taking a walk or a run, if that's something that's part of your self-care practices, but finding something that helps, that confirms this awareness that you have, and that brings you back. Because if you're dissociating, you may well be going into dorsal vagal as a adaptive survival mechanism, which is the collapse part that polyvagal theory talks about. So being able to find those ways of bringing the energy up, and I talk about that in the setup right before the practices of that. I call it the continuum of energy, or movement of energy. How do we, if we realize that we're starting to collapse, what can we do that would bring our energy back up? And bellows breath would be a good example of that, generally speaking. Simply standing and changing your position, drinking some water, eating some nourishing food, getting outside, taking a walk, are all ways that we can increase our energy and be aware of this integration that's happening. And over time, a regular yoga practice, they'll it's designed to, when you do these practices together, or if you find a teacher that teaches a gentle trauma-informed practice, you're going to feel more integrated generally in your body. And I think that's a really key thing that will happen over time. So I'm going to just check in here. Thank you so much for those questions. There's, of course, a lot more that I could say, but I think for the general purposes, I hope that I've addressed those enough for now. And feel free to leave me more questions that maybe I'll answer via the Facebook page during the week. So I'm going to look up at my screen here and see if there is any other questions. I see Caroline Holmes from Canada. Hello. And Saskia from Brighton. So glad you can see the live stream here. So I can't tell if there's anybody else here at the moment, but I'm so grateful. I hope if you weren't able to join us live, maybe you're seeing this on the repeat. And I really appreciate you indulging me this time to be able to expand my, give my thank yous to many people that I wanted to thank. But I'm so grateful for you for watching this and for listening to the journey that I've been on, and for witnessing some of this appreciation for all of the people that it took to make this project come alive. And so I'm grateful for all of that as well. And as much as I try and put some pretty serious limits around social media, I've been really grateful this week for the opportunity to reach out to people in many countries, and people that are all around the world, because we have things like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So this week I'm feeling it's a little tiring engaging with all those platforms. I don't know that it's sustainable for me, but it's certainly been very gratifying to see this kind of body work get a broader audience and in many different countries. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And let's just take a nice deep breath together. We're going to inhale and exhale. And I see Esther is there from Boston. Great to have you there as well live. Let's take another inhale and exhale. Thank you. Launch day, it's Tuesday. It's going to be a big week. Stay tuned, and it's probably my last Facebook Live. If there seems to be a lot of loose ends, then maybe I'll do one more of these if people are interested. But for right now, my cup is full, and thank you so much for taking this work into the world. And as much as it's nice and an intention to sell books, the bigger intention is that you would care for yourself in a particular way and spread this work to the people that you work with and the people that you love and care about. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.